Hello everyone, as you could probably tell from this title, this is about career no-nos, and the reason why I wanted to talk about this is because I was actually just having a conversation with some people that either are not proactively doing some of these or just not doing them at all. So I think this is very good for you to kind of have a checkup on your own career to see, am I doing this, especially in times like this? Or if I should be doing something more and what should that be. So if you're either curious about it or if you just want to kind of see if you maybe like it dropped off the wayside and now you have to remind yourself to do it. I have a friend actually who is a software engineer and he's just not entirely sure if he should be looking elsewhere. So this is more about shopping around to see your worth. He's been in this role for since graduation, essentially, since college graduation, and he's just been going up the ranks. He likes the role, he likes the trajectory he's going, it's very stable. But I do think that you actually do get more money and you get more opportunities if you just shop around. And it doesn't mean you're actually making the purchase, you're just simply shopping. So in this case, you can go open up your LinkedIn, you can apply for roles or do interviews and get the offer. Then you can make the decision from there. There's nothing that is commitment until that very moment. You might even be surprised to see that maybe they'll pay you double, or maybe they will pay you even more than you think. And maybe this is exactly what you need. If you feel like what you're doing is pretty stale and you want to change, then this might actually be it. But you never know until you actually do it. I fell into this trap as well when I was at Accenture, thinking I'll be at Accenture for years. No. So I went to shop around and I'm like, okay, there's a lot of options out there. For me, I was not shopping around for pay, but I was shopping around for a different opportunity that went closer to what I was looking for. So specifically with that's where solutions architect came from, or solutions consultant, or just anything related to that in the tech company or tech industry, because I didn't know that kind of role existed. The second one is very similar to this, but always keep your LinkedIn updated. Because you do get passive responses, even if you're not actively looking, but you will get people or recruiters specifically knocking down on your door, or even people that are just like, hey, I think that you'd be a great fit for this particular role out there. If you do something like that and you optimize your LinkedIn, you will get a lot of offers for interviews, not offers, but you can get offers too, to say hey, we would love to have you on your team. And I've gotten a few very interesting ones out there that I did not think I would be considered for, but I was like, okay, this is interesting to consider. But updating your LinkedIn, especially with your most recently updated information and achievements, is key. If you were in this role for 3 years and the last time you updated it was when you got this initial role, you need to update it. You need to just not put in your company name and your role. You need to actually put in information of what you did, what you achieved in that particular role. That way that if you were just actively and passively looking, you would at least have it optimized and you would see what opportunities are out there. You never know. Again, it kind of goes hand in hand with the first one on shopping around to see your work, but also it's also good for career exploration to see what other people are looking for you. And sometimes for me, if I was in the situation where I'm I would consider it if the right pay comes around and the right company comes around. This would essentially help you get there closer. If you were still showing your old role out there, they're going to just make you closer to what you were before, but not where you are now. So definitely keep that updated. You also want to make sure that recession proof, if you ever were laid off, that you have it ready and you're not just scrambling to get this all done. At least doing this in a more scheduled and a little bit more periodic time of doing this, then you'll be a little bit more diligent and it will be a lot better quality. This one's kind of a no-brainer. I think a lot of people know about this, but they don't actually do it, and it's negotiating salaries. So specifically for a lot of companies, they actually do have a cap. So depending on the level that they think you are, and they give you a level, then they have a specific compensation cap within that. That's usually base salary. But there are definitely ways you can negotiate. Maybe if you were in tech, you would have more equity, or if you wanted to negotiate maybe starting later, or if you want to negotiate specific benefits that are out there, or negotiating maybe if you could pay my master's degree, something like that. But a lot of these bigger companies already have established benefits out there, so you don't have to worry about that. But negotiating salaries, it never hurts to try to negotiate your base. Just make sure that you do your research, make sure you come prepared, and that you come in very, very strong and confident, but you don't go too strong. But at the same time, you never know until you try. For me, unfortunately, they weren't able to negotiate higher from my base salary, but I was able to get a very decent equity refresh, equity grant. So when I was actually talking to other people that started with me, my equity grant was definitely on the higher end compared to what they had. So I was like, okay, I'm glad that I negotiated. Like, if I just accepted it face forward, then it would have been, to be honest, like 30K less in equity. So I actually was able to negotiate 60K more in equity. Yes, I have to wait for it to be vested, and it is still taxed, but it's still 30K more. And unfortunately, you don't get an equity grant after that too. Like, it's only when you get signed in, so it's not like you get it when you get promoted. So it is a very big important piece of it. Then the other thing is, like, this is actually where I was talking to my friend who hasn't been shopping around. It's doing informational interviews. Even if you know you want to be like a software engineer or you want to be a consultant and you know exactly what company, you don't actually know until you reach out to them and say like, oh, maybe it actually is exactly what I think it is. Or you never know what you're missing until you know what it's missing, you know? So, for example, when I was at Accenture, I was like, oh, I like it. I have great work-life balance because I don't have to actually work from the airport or work at a client site as often. But at the same time, I realized that I was lacking in the product impact. I knew about it, but I was just kind of thinking about all the good stuff and on top of the bad stuff, so I didn't really get that. It really took the last straw to understand that. But when I did informational interviews, I was like, okay, I'm glad I'm not doing product management because all you do is just documentation, PRDs, and it's honestly not as glamorous as people think it is. So I'm like, I'm glad I did that. So I don't just jump into a role and realize like, oh, I actually don't want this. But I did realize I do like client-facing work. I do like a balance of external and internal work, so there's some kind of variety, and I do like that variety as well. So I don't like to have I do like project-based work, and I don't like to have task-based work. So knowing that and doing informational interviews either at companies or with the roles, you have an idea of, do I see myself with this company? Do I see myself with this role? I do this even at Google. So even when I'm at Google, I am doing this with people at Google, like maybe every other week. The good thing is that we have this internal system that kind of does like a Russian roulette of who you want to do a one-on-one with, informational interviews. And so it's really interesting for me to see like what roles are out there. But at the same time, I proactively reach out to people in my particular product area, in every area that I work with, or like at least specific stakeholders internally that I work with, and try to figure out what they actually do. So helps me work better, but at the same time makes me think about what I would want to do in the future if I would want to move to transition that role. So it's very interesting to do that. I would always do informational interviews even if you're not looking to do a career shift, because you never know, like when something happens or when a role pops up and you're like, I actually do find that interesting, but you're not finding out too late. You already have it all interested and you're all ready and you know who to speak to. Do your informational interviews within your company and outside your company. And this is also for good advice as well too. So it's not necessarily like your next career move. It could be like, how would you recommend you handle this situation? I want to get your opinion, or I want to get your thoughts because of your background and all that kind of stuff. So that is a situation that you can also do informational interviews. So you're not always just doing like a social lunch or social coffee chat. You're actually learning as well. So consider like mentorship as well on top of doing an informational interview. The other one is like truly doing research on companies that is beyond what is publicly known. I think a lot of people fall under this, where they are like, yeah, I am doing research. I'm Googling a lot. I'm looking at all the newspaper articles. I'm looking at all the news articles that are out there, the blog posts, but you need to look beyond that. You want to look at, for example, people that work at that company and what background did they come from, and what kind of people are they, because if they are attracting a specific demographic, then it tells you a little bit about them. I actually found it very interesting when I was doing a lot of research. It was like, oh, I like how a lot of people came from ex-consulting. And then I've also noticed in some others that like, oh, they came from many different backgrounds. Like I have a veteran, someone who came from a non-business degree background. And then when I did interviews around within Google, as I was at Google, I was like, that's really interesting, because I found out that a lot of people were coming from the ad side of things. So it's interesting to do the research internally and externally. But when I say this, mostly it's like when you do research, you want to know what truly is the role. So this actually goes hand in hand with the informational interview. I always try to recommend doing an informational interview with someone in that particular role. It is very easy to do that in a bigger company, not that easy to do in a smaller company, just because if they're hiring for this role, most likely you are actually interviewing someone that is in that role in your team that you're going to be hired for. So it might be a little bit harder for that. I have had that situation pop up, but at least you could look into it and do research on like what that role is. This makes a huge difference, okay? Because when I did the job description for Google Solutions Architect, I was like, what is this? This is so broad. But then when I actually I did an informational interview during my interviews with the client with Google, I was like, oh, I actually didn't know about all these things and how different they are. And what teams that were in the interview process. Like when I say research beyond the company, like I really mean do that extra credit work where you're doing informational interviews with people of that company at the time of your interview in that either similar role or in the same business org as the role. That would be very helpful and very interesting too, because you get a lot of insider details and then you have an idea of like, do you really want to do this role? Do you want to accept this role? Or maybe you were like, okay, I'm going to get some tips from this interview process. And I did get some tips on this interview process that would be very useful to use in an interview, and it worked. And then this is the one that I feel like everyone should be doing, but I always have to say it, but be nice to everyone, okay? Like I would be there are surprises out there where people kind of blur the lines between setting boundaries and being nice. When I say not being nice, like a lot of people make this mistake because sometimes when they feel very annoyed, they get a little bit snappy, they get sassy, and they also have sometimes just kind of like give an attitude for something that you didn't do. This I'm not talking about specifically for me, but I have spoken to some colleagues of mine that have met snappy people at work, where they have been in situations where, like, for example, they're waiting for a line for food, and then a friend was just like, "Hey, I didn't know you were on this line," and then just joined in, and then the girl in front of her was like, "Hey, you can't be cutting. This is not googly." And I'm like, just let it go. It's just one person. And it's the person behind you, okay? I know, like, it's not fair or anything for the people behind you, but at the same time, if they're not having an issue, then you're fine. But you want to be nice to everyone, because now my colleagues are like, I don't even want to sit next to her. She's like so snappy. And there's a lot of events that we have at Google. So a lot of times she sees her, you're like, nope, I'm walking the other way. So be nice to everyone, no matter who they are, no matter if you don't even think that you work with them. So this means like people that are in the office that are cleaning, or maybe they're the receptionist, or maybe they're security. You always want to be nice. This also goes to show for your interviews as well, because there is a test-ish. It's very informal though, where they do interviews and then they kind of also ask the people before them, going like, hey, how did you think about Joe Smith? Oh, Joe Smith was not really that nice. He was just only focusing on doing the interview. Well, that will show how they treat other people beyond what they're doing work for, and that actually goes to show what they do with the culture. So you may want to be nice to everyone, and really you never know who that person is going to be. Maybe they're going to be your teammate one day, maybe they're going to be on an event like we mentioned, and you're now kind of like, oh, who is this person? I don't want to really be with this person. I was actually with this person at an event before. She seemed fine. I don't know what was going on here. So it's really he said. I wasn't in that situation. I wasn't even there that day. But I thought it was interesting. Be nice to everyone. Try not to be snappy. Try to be understanding. At a certain point, I know you might be a little bit snappy, but only if this is not the first offense. Like if you've tried to say like, hey, I don't really appreciate when you do this, and then they still do it, then yeah, go be it. Go do it, because that person is not really being nice at this point. But try to be nice. Kill it with kindness. So just to kind of wrap it up, mistakes that you might be making: not shopping around to see your worth, not updating your LinkedIn as updated as possible, not waiting until the last minute in this case, not negotiating your salaries, and it doesn't have to be your salaries, it could be like your benefits, your equity, your bonuses, not doing informational interviews and learning about other roles that are out there, or even other companies. It doesn't even have to be outside your company. It could be within your company for projectile of your career, but also just to get to know people within your company, so you can get to know them. And then they also have spheres of influence. If you ever needed to do something or learn something, you know who to talk to, and vice versa. Not truly doing research on the company. And when I say that, I really mean like the interview aspect and really learning how it's like to be there, really trying to make an effort beyond just what's publicly known, because everyone's got that information. I know, like, at this point, like, oh, but I did a lot more research than that other person, but only if you really know the role, then you get the best of best worlds, because you know how the role is like for you, and vice versa. It will show you've done the research. And then not being nice to everyone, which is like very obvious, but you never know. And then honestly, there's a lot of times where people, they disappoint me. I wish everyone was nice, but that's not always the case. So let me know down below, what is something that I've missed? Like, what do you think that people are doing that they shouldn't be doing, or people that they should be starting? So like start, continue, and stop. Let me know down below. See you next time. Bye.